How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so why was Miles Davis so unique? Well, there are probably many reasons, but one thing in particular stands out to me, and it's this. With him, less was more. Miles Davis never needed to be loud or to dominate. In a musical time beginning in the 1940s, when virtuosity often meant playing as fast and as many notes as possible, Miles followed his own inclinations and went in the other direction. And what I mean by this is that his trumpet playing was spacious and soft and subtle and deeply sensitive. He'd leave silences where others would usually cram in their flourishes and their licks. He'd hold a single note just long enough to make you feel it deeply. Then he'd pull back, leave a breath of space, and let you fill it in yourself. That's the genius of Miles Davis. He understood that music isn't just about the notes. No, it's about the space between them. And just as importantly, it's about knowing when to stop playing them. And his minimalism, his less is more approach, was especially revolutionary in the 1959 album Kind of Blue, which helped define the modal jazz movement. And there, instead of complex chord changes that demanded constant navigation, Davis stripped things down to just a few modes or scales. And so the result of this was that the music breathed, it flowed, it invited listeners in instead of overwhelming them. You know, Miles once said, "It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play." Now, that single line could sum up his entire philosophy. He wasn't afraid of silence. He made it a part of the music. In fact, the silence made the notes that were played that much more impactful and meaningful, more personal, more idiosyncratic, more alive. But Miles wasn't the only jazz musician of this vein. There was also the great piano player, Thelonious Monk, playing around the same time, and in fact, they played together at one point. Now, Monk's playing, well, it can also be quite spare. He'd let long seconds pass between chords. He sometimes hits notes just off the beat. Now, in all of this, he's not playing wrong. No, he's playing real. It's just that it's raw and it's stripped down. I mean, many of his songs, they're not dressed up with frills. They linger. They hesitate. Monk gives each note room to breathe. And in that space, something important happens. You begin to lean in. Your mind starts to wander between the notes. But the larger point here is just that both Miles and Monk understood that excess is often the enemy of depth. And so part of their respective genius lay not in what they added, but in what they left out. Now, I could give you a long list of other examples from different art forms. I mean, take Ernest Hemingway, for example, and his iceberg theory of writing, where the bulk of the story's meaning is implied and not stated. Or take the Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni's use of ellipses, where he omits sequences of the narrative. Or take the haiku masters, where a world is described in just a few syllables. Or Zen calligraphy, where one stroke is enough. You get the idea. Okay, but art aside for a moment, couldn't we use a little less is more attitude in general today? An approach that emphasizes things like space and silence and simplicity. I mean, in a world addicted to more content, more speed, more spectacle, the wisdom of less feels like something that we desperately need. We need something other than simply a world rushing forward in endless motion. We need counterpoints. We need pauses. We need a stillness and a sparseness that somehow says more than all the noise. As the Taoists knew so well, sometimes we forget that the cup is useful not because of the clay that forms it, but because of the space within it. In other words, emptiness is not a lack. It's just as real and just as present as the material which surrounds it. To go back to Miles, silence is not an absence. No, it's space. It gives space to sound. It gives breath to rhythm. Again, as Miles once said, it's not what you play, it's what you don't play that makes all the difference. Actually, now that I think about it, in his own way, the philosopher Martin Heidegger had a word for this kind of presence, a way of approaching life he called letting be. In contrast to the modern obsession with control and with mastery, Heidegger talks about a gentler and much more reverent way of being. Instead of always pushing and taking and fixing, we can sometimes just let things be what they are. We can listen, not just hear. We can see, not just look. This letting be is the heart of less is more. It's not about doing less, it's about being more open, being more attuned, and being more alive. When we stop filling every single gap, we notice what dwells in the silence or in the quiet. Ultimately, for Heidegger, less doesn't mean less meaning. It means something like more mystery, more depth, more room for the unsaid to rise up and speak to us. Anyway, I guess my larger point here is just that in a culture obsessed with noise and with productivity, silence can feel like idleness or like the absence of something positive, and simplicity can look like weakness. But the truth of the matter is that to choose less is not to retreat from life. No, it's to return to it more fully. It's not scarcity, it's sufficiency. It's a way of clearing the noise so something real can be heard. Ultimately, the deepest things, the things that truly move us, are rarely loud. A quiet glance across the room, a line of poetry that you can't forget, a moment of stillness in which you feel completely alive. Or, to go back to Miles, a single trumpet note hanging in the air. Bye for now.